Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Masters in School Counseling virtual information session. My name is Tom Crash. I'm our Director of Graduate Admissions here at Commonwealth U. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. There are a number of other things that you could be doing right now, but you're taking time out of your schedule to join us to, explore your potential experience in our school counseling graduate program. I think we have a lot to offer. You'll learn more about that tonight. The event should take between, I would say, 30 and 45 minutes probably. I know Dr. Cerrito has a great presentation scheduled. If you have any questions, if you wouldn't mind putting them into the Q&A, we will get to the open Q&A after the presentation is over. But before we go any further, Dr. Cerrito, Chelsea, would you mind introducing yourselves? Just gonna meet the team.
Absolutely. So Chelsea, you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Chelsea Dwyer. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions. So I deal with all of the graduate inquiries and applications as they come through, along with my coworker Rachel. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you, Chelsea. Dr. Cerrito.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Julie Cerrito. I am the program coordinator for the Master of Science degree in school counseling, and I also work with those students who are in our postmaster's certificate in school counseling program. And so this is my 5th year at Commonwealth University, but my 12th year working in higher education as a counselor educator. So I spent the past 12 years working as a professor. And then prior to that, I spent 12 years as a practicing school counselor here in Pennsylvania Public Schools. So, oh my goodness, almost 25 years in. It's hard to believe that I'm, that far along in my career. And, I just told a student the other day, though, I love what I do as much now as I did back when I started in, the early 2000s. So it really is a profession that I'm passionate about. And I hope I can share some of that enthusiasm with all of you tonight. My interests in terms of research interests and career interests is I really love career development, especially looking at elementary school career development and then how that kind of progresses throughout the lifespan. So as students move into middle school and high school, and then in their journey as they transition into the plethora of post-secondary options that are available to them. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, and the research interest too is a very hot topic now, and it's a topic that probably comes up often in the field as well. So that's certainly very convenient for sure.
Yes, and I would say too that, if we look at the field of school counseling in particular, it's heavily rooted in that vocational development and career development. It's a big part of what we do in our jobs, and I think that's one differentiator that is a little unique compared to, other subspecialty areas of counseling.
Yep, absolutely. So, Dr. Cerrito, do we want to kick off the presentation?
Sure, yep, let's do it. All right. Do you want me to get started then, Tom, with advancing the slides here?
Yeah, yep, absolutely, if
Okay,
you don't mind.
perfect.
And I know, typically one of the first questions that, students are always wondering is, well, why would I want to go for the Masters of Science in School Counseling, whether it's they're an undergrad degree in education and looking to make a career change, or they're coming right out of a bachelor's degree with a degree in social services or psych or something like that. Like, why would someone want to go into the Masters of School Counseling?
That's a great question. So, there's a lot of options out there as students are beginning to consider, well, what's the right one for me? And, there's so many different graduate degrees out there and graduate programs out there. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of individuals who are interested specifically in school counseling who come from so many different backgrounds. So, why school counseling? Because it seems to be a natural fit with those who are interested or have backgrounds in education, those who have backgrounds in psychology or sociology or social work or communication studies. You can really make that link of school counseling to so many different undergraduate degrees, which is why, really any undergraduate degree can prepare you for the fields of school counseling and the work that school counselors do. We really prepare students from the ground up. And so, there's so many different kind of aspects to being a school counselor. It looks a little different at each of the developmental levels. So elementary school, middle school, high school, the job. There's similarities across those developmental levels, but there are certainly differences. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the why, because I think that's a big question and certainly a loaded question. And so as we kind of break that down, it'll probably make a little bit more sense when we talk about what our program has to offer here at Commonwealth University, how it's different from maybe other programs that you might be looking at or comparing across the state, what makes us unique. So hopefully I'll kind of share a lot of that information with you and then have some time at the end to be able to answer questions that are not covered in our presentation. So when we look at the program overview here, I think one of the things that makes us unique and our program unique is that our courses are delivered online 100%. And when we say that, we mean that there's a combination of both synchronous and asynchronous classes. The majority of our classes are synchronous, meaning that just like we're coming together today and meeting, that there is a time that we come together for class and we meet, face to face via Zoom. And that usually happens in the evenings. All of our classes are offered from 5 to 8 p.m. And the reason for that is we like to accommodate working professionals. So for example, some individuals in our audience tonight may be school teachers, or they might be working, some type of behavioral health setting. And so them being able to still work during the day, but take classes in the evening allows them to progress through their graduate degree at a rate that is right for them. And so really like that. The other nice part about being online is that, we can basically accommodate students from wherever they are. And so, we know that wherever you're working might be a commute from your home or something like that. And so it's just really convenient to be able to go in a space, whether that's your home or another space that you can go to, log on to classes after you've worked and be able to kind of progress in your own career journey and towards those goals that you have set for yourself. So the courses are online, as I mentioned, synchronous, the majority of them. We do have a few select courses that are asynchronous. And what that means is courses that do not necessarily have meeting times that we all come together, but rather they're a bit more self-paced where you're working through modules throughout a semester and, the professor is still giving you feedback and whatnot. But I would say, like I mentioned before, the majority of our classes, the far majority of them do have synchronous required components. So in addition to the coursework, we also require a practicum and internship experience, and that is within Pennsylvania in your preferred geographic location. So we really work with students to try to figure out what is the best fit for them based upon geography and logistics of their life. And so, we come together and try to find that best location for you. And our students are required to have 3 different levels of their practicum / internship placement, because the certificate in Pennsylvania is a pre-kindergarten through 12. And so because it's that pre-kindergarten through 12 certification in our state of Pennsylvania, it really necessitates that students have experience and exposure to all 3 levels of development. So you come out of this program pretty much ready to jump into a job as an elementary school counselor, a middle school counselor, a high school counselor, and have some experience with each of those levels. So it makes you very marketable to school districts that are out there. So I think that's one thing that I think is really important that students know about. So we are 48 credits. So that is the number of credits that are required in our program, which is less than quite a few other programs. If you're going to kind of do that comparison, and we know that time is money, right? And so no one really wants to have to go to school longer than they have to. So we really like the fact that we've been able to keep this program to a 48 credit program. It is about 2 years for full-time students. And again, a lot of students will email me and they'll say, well, how long does it take to complete the program? And that's a question that you can probably answer best, because it depends on how quickly students move through it. So some students are taking 9 credits, every semester. They're maybe taking some winter courses, they're taking some summer courses. So students that are, progressing at that rate are going to finish in about 2 years. And that's probably about the quickest we would have students finish a 48 credit program. But students have up to 6 years to complete the degree from start to finish. So there is no mad dash to the finish line. If you are in a situation in your life where maybe you have a full-time job and you have family that you're caring for, and maybe it makes sense to only take one class a semester or two classes. You really do get to move at a pace that's right for you. So there's no prescription that says you have to do it this way. This is the only way that you can do it. We really work with you, and you can start out part-time and then go to full-time, or go to start out full-time and get the job of your dreams and then drop down to part-time. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in the program, which is nice for students and definitely attractive. As I mentioned, so there's a part-time option, there is a full-time option, and how quickly you move through it, we would have conversations. Usually when I meet with students and advise them, one of the first questions I ask is, when do you hope to be finished? And a lot of students will have some ideas, and then we kind of work backwards in terms of, well, if you hope to be done in this amount of time, this is kind of how many classes you need to take each
Mhm.
semester to get to that final end goal.
So, Dr. Cerrito, I know we will likely have a good mix of students who are either, coming out of undergrad with a degree, or they're maybe current teachers or working in a school district to a different capacity. When you talk about part-time enrollment, typically, how many classes does that mean people are taking per semester then?
So part-time could be as little as one class, which would be 3 credits. They could do two classes, which is 6 credits. Once you start moving into the 9 credits or 12 credits, that's more looking like a full-time graduate student. And so I think the important differentiation between undergraduate and graduate is, as an undergraduate, you're typically taking between 12 to 18 credits, and that's considered the norm for undergraduate studies. When you move to the graduate level, the courses tend to be more intensive and more work. So you would take less. So at the graduate level, full-time study can typically be between 9 to 12 credits per semester. And part-time would probably be between 3 to 6.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. And I'm assuming that we may also have some students that, again, that are currently teaching, or currently working in a school district, and may want to take some additional courses during the summer. Will you see that sometimes where, maybe they'll take one class in the fall, one in the spring, two in the summer, three in.
Absolutely, Tom. Yes. And so we have a really nice selection of summer courses that we offer, because let's face it, if you're working in a school, you're busy during the academic year. And so maybe it's only one course or two courses that you can manage to take, and that's okay. But a lot of our teachers or our educators, people who are in education, even people who aren't, but just maybe the summer frees up a little bit more time for them. We have a nice variety of courses that we offer in the summer in varying sessions. So our sessions, we have courses that are offered in a 4-week session, in a 6-week session, in a 12-week session. And students, some prefer to, have a course stretched out over 12 weeks, because, they can do a little, chop away at it a little by little across the summer. And then others really prefer to jump in and do a 4-week course or a 6-week course, because they have a vacation in the Bahamas planned later in the summer or something like that. And so that's the really nice part, is you kind of get to
Mhm.
pick and choose what your style of learning is. If you
Sure.
like to kind of jump all in and do a 4 or 6 week class versus, being able to stretch that out. So yes, summer is a prime time to
Mhm.
certainly, get those credits that you need. And winter too. We don't offer a lot in winter,
Yeah.
but we do offer a couple courses, because winter is only 6 weeks versus summer is a full 12 weeks. So we could offer more in the summer, obviously, than we can in the winter.
Mhm.
But we do offer some in the winter. And so, that's another opportunity to grab 3 credits in the winter and, still make progression towards your degree, even if the fall and spring are busy for you.
Mhm. And I know this is a common question that we hear, and I'm sorry, I know there will be a time for open Q&A, but are students able to complete the internship or the practicum while working full time?
So that's a great question, Tom. And yeah, feel free to, those of you who have questions, if you know me, those who might know me, I don't mind being interrupted. So as things kind of pop into your head, and I know, Tom, you're monitoring the chat, so I am okay with, if we can integrate questions in as we're kind of moving through
Okay.
some of these slides. So that's an excellent question in terms of, so working full time. I'll kind of do it in steps here. So the practicum experience comes before the internship experience, and the practicum experience is 100 hours. And so in that experience, students, if you're spreading that out over a 16-week semester, that's not a huge undertaking. So that's about 7.5 hours a week. So
Mhm.
students will tackle that by doing maybe 1 day a week in the schools, or if they can't do 1 day, they'll maybe do, a half day 1 day and another half another day. And so that's definitely, I would say, doable if you're working full time. Um, the internship is kind of the bigger load of the two. And so our internship is a 600-hour internship, and that is 6 credits. And you'll see that when I get to the next slide, in terms of, so the practicum is 3 credits, 100 hours. The internship is 6 credits, it's 600 hours. And so, but the 600 hours can be spread out over 2 semesters, where in practicum it has to be completed within 1 semester because it's less hours. So what that means is you could enroll in those, you could do 3 credits one semester and then 3 credits another semester. And so you can, kind of spread that out over like a 30 to 32 week semester to get those hours in. And so it is possible, just I would say no, that it may take a little bit longer than someone who just, takes 6 credits and does 600 hours in one semester. Someone who's working full time will
Mhm.
definitely probably want to spread that out over 2 semesters, is what my recommendation would be. Um, Sometimes it could be a little bit tricky for those who work in schools because you work the same hours as school counselors. But I will say that we have students who are full-time teachers and have figured out ways, even, to spread it out over those 2 semesters,
Mhm.
and have worked with their school districts, because there's such a need for school counselors folks out there, that I think school districts, are emergency certifying students to go and become school counselors in their districts. So they've been really good in working with us, and understanding that, they can kind of squeeze some time in, whether it's planning period or lunch or coming in a little early or staying a little later at the end of the day. And so there's some kind of creative ways that we can build into making sure that you meet that hour requirement.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So in terms of our accreditation, that often comes up. So we are approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And so we are also accredited through CAPE, which is the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation. So our national accreditation is through CAPE, as I mentioned before, and then our state approval comes from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And I also said before, your certificate comes from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. At the conclusion of the program, you would apply for your certification as a PK through 12 elementary and secondary school counselor, enabling you to work at any of those three types of settings within schools. And so we said that it's a great fit for any undergraduate major. You don't necessarily have to have a background in psychology or sociology or education, that, we can really look at the parallels in so many different undergraduate majors and say, how can, your background in communication studies relate to being a school counselor? Well, there's a lot of ways it can relate, right? We're working with people every day. We're working with parents, we're working with students. And so those interpersonal skills are really important. And so communication studies majors come in and they have those interpersonal skills down, right? So all of you will bring kind of unique perspectives in from your undergraduate studies.
And Dr. Cerrito, are there any, I know it's a fit for any majors. I know sometimes we will frequently hear is, oh, I better have, have an undergraduate degree in education in order to apply and be successful, or I better have an undergrad degree in psychology, in order to be successful. Can you talk about some of the other programs that we will commonly see, on applications, and what the transition process might be like for someone who doesn't have a degree in education or behavioral sciences?
Yeah, I would say, they're the most common ones that we see, just because, if people's interest is in education or psychology or social work or sociology, it's a great fit because, they've already studied and kind of learned about some of the human theories of behavior and all of that. But, we have had students from, gosh, a lot of different majors. I've had a history student who was a history major. I've had students who have backgrounds in like computer technology. And so it really does, run the gamut. And like I said, technology, we think like, well, what does that have to do with the school counselor? Computer technology, it has a lot to do. We're hiring virtual school counselors in, charter academies and cyber schools right now. And so, someone who has that background in technology my goodness, and to pair that with school counseling is amazing, right? So I think you'd be hard pressed for me, the career development person, to
Mhm.
find a major that I couldn't connect to school counseling in some way. Of course, some of them lend themselves more than others, but the truth of the matter is I think this major is versatile, or this program is versatile enough that we can kind of connect to some of those skills and what was learned at the undergraduate level and really kind of help it to come together or dovetail together nicely.
Great, thank you.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the curriculum. So, my advice to students is when they're deciding across, programs, or some students will say, gosh, I really want to be a counselor, but I'm not sure what kind of counselor I want to be, or I really want to help people, or I really want to work with children or adolescents. And so my advice is generally to look at the courses that are required in a program. And this is true at the undergraduate level, it's true at the graduate level. So I have this slide up to have you take a look at it and see, do these courses interest you? Would you be interested in learning more about counseling skills and how to help people in a formal helping relationship? Are you interested in the theory and the techniques that kind of drive the work we do as counselors? Career development and post-secondary readiness. So how do we help students from kindergarten learn about who they are in the world of work and their abilities and skills and talents, and kind of integrate that across their developmental journey into high school, and then their preparation for either going to college or learning a trade, or an apprenticeship, or moving into some type of world of work job, right? So I think that's a course that's really important for school counselors. Appraisal techniques. We're involved in school counseling with doing assessments with students, whether that's IQ screenings, achievement measures. We, work a lot with the Keystone testing and the PSSA testing. So kind of those group standardized tests that we do. So I think that's an important class. Group counseling skills and leadership skills. So how do we, when we're not doing individual one-on-one counseling, how can we be effective by bringing students together in a group setting? Human growth and development really focuses on that lifespan journey that students have from conception to death. We focus on, but especially during those years that we have students typically, which would be, from right about age 4 or 5 until they graduated 18 or 19 years of age. Multicultural counseling competency is, of course, just learning about diversity and how diversity in the relationships that you build with clients and students and families is impacted by, what their backgrounds are, socioeconomic status, race, learning disabilities, all that kind of stuff, gender. So yeah, that's a course that's really important too. And then kind of we move into, so if you look at the top part, from counseling skills down to multicultural counseling competency, those are really the courses that are what we call those core counseling courses that are relatable to, my goodness, really anyone who identifies as being a counselor. And then we move into some of the more specific subspecialty areas within counseling, which in this case, it's school counseling. So they are the ones that are really unique, where we kind of really introduce you to the profession of school counseling. And so that starts with the orientation class, which most students would take in their first semester. We offer that in the fall. So depending on when you would start, that would be either your first or second semester typically that you would take that class. And that's a course where you're introduced to the national model for school counseling according to the American School Counselor Association, and you learn all about the role and the function of a school counselor. The second part to that course is what we call contemporary issues in professional school counseling. So that's typically taken after you take the orientation class. And that is a course that is really great for just helping students learn about, well, what kinds of things will you find in your job as a school counselor? So how to work with students from who have experienced grief and loss, how to work with students who have learning disabilities, how to work with students who have mental health diagnoses. So some of those like really common things that you would experience in a school setting is really what that course covers. So it kind of, looks at the specific kind of issues that you would find, school violence. So those kinds of things. And then we move into internship and practicum in school counseling. Remember, practicum is 3 credits, 100 hours comes before internship, which is 6 credits. And then we have an elective course that you can choose to take. So some students may take a course in human sexuality. We offer that course. We offer, a course in wellness. They can learn more about the process of diagnosis, because as we know, in schools, we're seeing more and more mental health diagnoses. And students are finding that they're meeting with parents who have these diagnoses, so it'll be important for them to understand what that entails and how they can best support the student in a school environment with that particular mental health diagnosis. So that is the curriculum. So you can take a look at that and see if those classes are ones that might interest you and you get excited about. That's the best way, I think.
Dr. Cerrito,
Yes.
is there, I guess, a favorite class that you have to teach? I know they're all near and dear to your heart, but if you had to pick just a couple where, like, no, I love this teaching this class because of this reason, is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh gosh, Tom, that's such a hard question for me. My students would tell me every class I go in, I'm like, I love teaching this class. This is my favorite. And they're like, you say that about all of them. So if I look at the lineup here, oh my gosh, I've taught almost all of these classes. What would I say is my favorite? Can I get 2 of them?
Oh, sure, yes,
Okay,
yes.
I don't think I could choose just one, Tom. So I say beginnings and endings are really important. So
Oh,
in the beginning, I typically teach students the orientation to professional school counseling class, because it's usually one of the first classes they take. And I feel like that has to be the hook, right? If we want to get students excited and interested in the field of school counseling, then, that orientation class, we want to make sure that they're feeling good about their choice to become a school counselor. So that is my favorite class because their energy levels are high, where, they're excited to learn about what they're going to be doing and how they're going to impact students and, the lives of families. So that's a course that I certainly do love to teach. And then
mhm.
I would say probably the I get to see students in the beginning and the end, and that's really nice because so I think the second class that I would say would be the internship course. And that's just because they're ending. Usually they finish with internship, and that's one of the last courses that they take. And it's exciting because we're talking about finding a job and, taking maybe that's the exciting part, finding a job. Maybe the not so exciting part is, okay, you have to pass a praxis exam and kind of all those nitty gritty details, but it's really exciting because you get to see how far students have come from the beginning to the end. And I really consider myself so privileged to have the opportunity to be able to see students at those two like pivotal periods in their life, to be able to welcome and usher them into the profession, and then to be able to send them off and do the great work that we train them to do. So those are my 2, Tom.
I know it's a tough question, but you
But
gave
I
a
love
good.
all of them. I mean, I love the career. I said I like career development, so I've taught that class and I love it too. But so yeah, my students would laugh and say, "You say that about all your classes," which is probably true. But if I had to choose 2, that's what I would say. Good question. All right. So in addition to the counseling classes, which you see on this previous slide here, I think, again, what sets us apart, and to get back to that why question, is because we also have courses that students would take with other educational professionals. So for example, data-driven decisions. We know that is such an important to use data to drive the decisions that school counselors make with students is so critical. That is a course that is part of our educational leadership program. And so oftentimes students will be with individuals who are learning to become teachers, or they're at the graduate level, or they're learning to become principals or superintendents. And so that is so important because that's going to be who you work with as a school counselor, right? Those are your eyes and your ears, teachers and principals and superintendents. So it's nice to have the opportunity to work with them. And I think that's a piece that really makes our program different, is that we do have courses built into the curriculum that allow students to network and interact with the people that they're actually going to be working with in their job as a school counselor. So the same is true with the school law, ethics, and finance class. So that's a course that, oftentimes students will be in with principals, superintendents, teachers, curriculum and instruction directors, and that kind of stuff. So, and that's really nice. And just the expertise that people bring, like I certainly have the counseling expertise, but I think about Dr. Starmack and, some of our other faculty that teach the school law, ethics, and finance class, and they really get to benefit from someone who's been in the education field for so many years and has so many awesome stories to share throughout their experiences. And students really get to benefit from that. And then, of course, the educational research and writing class, which is how to become a more effective writer, how to learn how to do good research. And so that course, again, is one of those courses where you wouldn't necessarily just be in with school counselors in those courses, but they are kind of cross-pollinated with students who are in other graduate programs as well. So I would say that's a big piece that makes us unique and makes us different, because our roots as school counselors are really in education. And so school counselors often have one foot in education and one foot in counseling, is the way that I like to say it. And so we kind of have the best of both worlds. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about professional experiences. And so within the courses, we have course embedded projects. And I would say the feedback that we receive from students is that we ask them to do things that are really relevant to what they would be doing as a school counselor. So I'm a really big fan of not just giving busy work and saying, like, yeah, go off and do this, but really being able to connect those assignments to what they're going to be doing in their future work setting. And so those course embedded projects are really important because students get to visualize, like, why is this important? Why should I be doing a stakeholder presentation project? Who's a stakeholder, and why are they important in schools? And so, that I think that's a really big key, is allowing students to see that connection in every course, right off the bat, and not have to wonder, like, what does this have to do with my job? We really try to make sure that it's relevant. And that is based upon, to kind of get down to this fourth point on this slide, our professors, and the wealth of experience that they bring, both in the educational leadership kind of side of it, and then the counseling side of it as well. Myself, I've been in counseling for 25 years. So I'll share stories with students and they'll say to me, did this really happen? Like, I can't make this up. And so, that's the nice part, is being taught by people who have actually been in the trenches for a significant amount of time and have stories to share about students and about families and about parents and other teachers. And I think that really makes the coursework come alive. And so we have an applied approach to instruction. We definitely, like I said, like to share our stories and our backgrounds with you, and really like to connect that to the work that you're doing. And then also that piece of requiring that 3-credit practicum and 6-credit internship in the schools is the best way to kind of put that learning into practice, right? So you take all these classes and then you get to the practicum and internship, and that's where, is a really jumping off point for students to be able to jump into practicum and then jump into their bigger kind of internship experience and have it all come together. And that's really exciting.
Yeah,
So
and I think this is important too, because you're going to take a lot of classes, right? And you're going to need an opportunity to be able to apply the things that you've learned. And I think this would be important to getting a job. It seems like the job market's going to be in the favor of our graduating students. But this is the culminating experience. This is, really kind of the bridge between finishing school and starting, your career as a school counselor. And I think this is great to hear.
yeah, and I think, the nice part about, having been in the profession for so long is, somebody said to me the other day, do you know so and so? And I thought, after 25 years, I think I know everybody, across the state. And
Mhm.
what's nice about that, and, I joke about it, but the reality of it is that we do have a lot of connections to different people, whether we're talking Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, right? Of people that we know, school counselors that I either was trained with or that I've sent students, to over the years. And so chances are we can connect you to the people in your home geographic area so that you can complete that practicum and internship in a local area that is best suited to what you need based upon, your job and your family and all that kind of stuff that we take into consideration. So I would say that's another really strong piece. I've lived in Pennsylvania my whole life. And so, having lived in Pennsylvania, worked in Pennsylvania as a school counselor, and then worked as a school counselor educator, I've gotten to know a lot of people across my career, and that's been proven to be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think, one of the more interesting parts too is, as a school counselor, you may be one of a few people in the building who can do what you do. There are, you work in a
Mhm.
school, there's a lot of teachers, right? That's a common profession in school,
Yes,
in the school district, whereas a school counselor, you may be one of a handful of people where like that you're responsible for that scope of work, right? So there's a lot of people looking
yes.
to you like, hey, you got this, right? So you want to make sure that you are well prepared. And I think your approach, Dr. Cerrito, that you provide our students with, again, the high impact experiences, the practicums, as soon as students cross the graduation stage, they are ready to go. They have the information they need to be able to be successful in their career.
Absolutely, Tom, and often with jobs too, that when they're crossing the stage, not only are we celebrating the fact that they've graduated from the program, but we're also celebrating the fact that many of them have already been employed by schools. And so, that reputation and, in the area is just, so important that students, oftentimes may even be under an emergency certificate where the district has hired them before we've even kind of signed, sealed, and delivered them, across the
Mhm.
finish line. And so, that's really nice to see. But yeah, to your point, Tom, about the fact that they may be the only person, that's so true.
Yeah.
What we know is, I know when I was a school counselor, I had a little over 550 students, and I was in a building and I was the only school counselor. And so oftentimes, I was seen maybe more like a pseudo administrator where,
Mhm.
the principal and I worked really closely together because there was no assistant or vice principal. It was just myself, the principal and the counselor. And so that relationship is really kind of unique because we're not really teachers, but we're not really administrators. We kind of fall somewhere in between.
Mhm.
And absolutely, but we are really the glue oftentimes that holds that school together because our job is unique. And we know that students, when they are learning, there's things that get in the way of their learning, right? And so
Right.
that's where a school counselor comes in because if students are bringing all of this, mental health concerns and academic concerns and social emotional concerns, learning
Mhm.
is impacted if they can't successfully cope and deal with those things. And so that's really where a school counselor comes in to help them be more successful in the school environment.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And so I often get the question where students will say, well, I think I really love school counseling and I think this is the right program, the right graduate program for me, but I'm worried. What if I'm not the person who's walking across the stage with a job and, already before I even get my diploma in the mail? What else can I do? Maybe I live in a geographic area that there's not a lot of school districts and the person who's hired as a school counselor stays in that role for 35 years and so I might be waiting 35 years till that person retires. And so students will ask the question, what else can I do with this school counseling master's degree if I don't get hired as a school counselor? And it's a great question. And so here on this slide you really get to see all of the different options, the different career options in addition to becoming school counseling is top of the list because yes, of course, we prepare you to be school counselors. But I have had students across my 12 years of teaching in higher education who have worked in every single one of these fields that fall below school counseling in some capacity or another. And sometimes students, looking at our career journeys, think about ourselves, right? We transition in and out of careers across our lifespan. It's no longer the days of our grandparents and maybe our parents where they stayed somewhere for 30 years, they got their gold watch and they retired, right? We know that people are kind of moving. It's just a different time where people are moving in and out of careers. And so all of these things are options for students beyond becoming a school counselor. So, and like I said, I've had students who have worked in admissions, college admissions, and career development offices, working in mental health agencies and social service agencies. So yes, you have a master's degree in counseling with a specialty in school counseling. And so those core courses, when we looked at the curriculum a couple slides back, those core courses train you very broadly in being a counselor. And then we drill down to those specific courses that are specific to school counselors. So I would say don't let the name school counseling kind of scare you to think that's the only career pathway you have in your life, and know that there's other options for you always in addition to school counseling.
Mhm.
Any questions about that or that list?
No, and I think again that's a very common mistake. I feel like every time Dr. Cerrito and we talk about this, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot you could, I look at this as almost like it's like a vocational thing where like, like we are just preparing people to do this one thing. It's like, no, no, no. Like in the coursework, you're going to start with a very broad scope, right? And you're going
Mhm.
to learn counseling from, from a very high level, then you'll slowly start to drill down on some of these subjects.
Sure. Right.
And you mentioned some of our previous alumni have gone into some of these other fields, so that's great to know as well, that you've got some built-in degree and career
Mhm.
flexibility if that's something that students are interested in.
Yes, yeah. At the end of the day, we're counselors. My identity is as a counselor first,
Mhm,
with a specialty in school counseling. So
mhm,
think of counseling as that umbrella, and then underneath that umbrella, we have the different subspecialties within counseling. So whether that's school counseling or rehabilitation counseling or career counseling or marriage and family counseling or clinical mental health counseling,
mhm,
we are still kind of connected and bound together by the counseling profession.
mhm, mhm. Yep, that's a great question. Thank you.
And so since we're talking about not only what you can do as a school counselor, but then also in like some of the other areas, this slide is really important because it looks at the job outlook. So what does the job scene look like if you come for this degree in school counseling? So we're looking at projected growth by 2032, about 5%. So when we looked at this in 2022, there were 342,400 that were currently employed. Um, and that's looking like it's increasing, right? So we're going up projected to that 360,800, which is faster than the average for all occupations. And if we look at salary, because again, that's another important piece with school counseling. And so the nationwide median salary is 60,140, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if we drill down to Pennsylvania specifically, and not just look at it kind of from a national, Pennsylvania does quite well. So Pennsylvania salaries for school counselors, salary is 66,080 for that kind of average. And then looking at the range, the starting could be, 40,460. That's a little on the low side. Probably in a private school, maybe that would be most school counselors, I would say, are starting like probably closer to that 66. And again, geographic region is a big part of that too, because someone living in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh may be getting paid more than someone who's living in a more rural area, of course. And
Mhm,
then most school counselors are employed in elementary and secondary schools. So that's just a little bit about in terms of the job outlook. So the job outlook is really good, and the salaries are really good starting salaries. The benefits in school districts are excellent, and so that is why students oftentimes gravitate towards the school counseling profession. And so this salary kind of looks and kind of compares. Well, what's the benefit of becoming a school counselor over a marriage and family counselor or a
mhm,
rehabilitation counselor or maybe some other type of counselor that's out there? And so when we look at kind of salaries across the different fields, if we go back a slide, we're looking at marriage and family counselors right around 56,000, mental health counselors around 49, and then rehabilitation counselors around 39. That's quite a big difference, if we kind of look at where school counselors start at. And then in addition to salary, that's attractive for individuals in and of itself. But the other things that really why individuals gravitate towards school counseling is because of the consistent and regular working hours. So, you work the hours of a teacher, which is 8 to 3 or 8 to 3:30 or whatever it is, and you're typically not working evenings or weekends or holidays, typically having summers off. Sometimes school counselors will have some allocated hours in the summer to go in and do some work, but most of the time it's not all summer long, that it's just a few hours here or there. So that's really nice. And the fact that, you're not necessarily on call the way maybe some other types of counselors may be on call, where they're waking up to respond to a crisis, in the middle of the night. School counselors typically aren't expected to be on call. So those are some reasons I think why students will choose the school counseling profession,
mhm,
and they're really interested in supporting students, their achievement, looking at their academic development, their social development, their emotional development, their career development. And I would say, again, what makes school counseling different is the fact that we are present for all students. We work with each and every student. We don't just work with students who are struggling academically, or those students who are really on the high end, like gifted students. We're really present for all students. And so there's a proactive and preventative lens that comes with school counseling that is a little different maybe than other counseling professions, where they're only seeing people who are in, crisis, or they're having, a really significant problem in their lives. We see those people too in this school, but we see other students who, are dealing with basic developmental needs that they just need some guidance with. And so we have alumni all over the place, right? Within Pennsylvania and outside of Pennsylvania. So, and this slide just shows a few of the many, many students that we have in our local school districts. And of course, this list is definitely not exhaustive, but just a mere sampling of some students and where they're placed at. And so, do you want me to talk about the application and admission, Tom, or do you want to take this one?
No, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so the fun stuff, application and admission. So we require again, it's for the most part, I don't think there's anything here that's really all that surprising. We have a required online application and an application fee. And I will say, if you're participating in this event tonight, or you're watching the recording, your application fee is waived. You just need to answer, I think the final question on the application is, it asks you if you've either spoken with a member of our graduate admissions team or participated in a recruitment event. You can say yes. Your application fee will be waived. We require the undergraduate transcript from all the institutions that you've attended. Same thing would be if you've attended any other graduate school. So if you have an undergrad degree in a graduate degree already, we would just need transcripts from any institution that you've attended. Dr. Cerrito is looking for a 3.0 undergrad GPA primarily, but I think, Dr. Cerrito, you would also consider certain students who have below 3.0 GPA, but on a probationary basis.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, Tom. We kind of look at, just like we look at students in schools, kind of the whole student. We look at students, recognizing that, someone who got a bachelor's degree 25 years ago, and maybe didn't quite have that 3.0 GPA, we don't want that to continue to follow them. And, they've done wonderful work and have contributed in so many ways. So, really looking at, of course, the GPA is an important piece, but looking at every applicant is unique, and saying, well, what else have they done? Not just letting a test score or what their final GPA define them.
Yeah, it's a holistic review. Yep. And Chelsea, I see, did you have something to add, Chelsea?
As a reminder, they have to be your official transcripts. They cannot be
Yes.
copied.
Yes, that is a good point. Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a very common question that we get. Yeah, we do need official copies of the transcripts. Thank you for that, Chelsea. And then the statement of goals, and I know, Dr. Cerrito, there's a prompt here. It's not only about assessing writing ability, it's also assessing, well, why is this the program? Why is this the career field? So, sometimes, essays are really just looking at, like, how well do you write? And that's part of what Dr. Cerrito is looking for. So explaining your reasons for pursuing the graduate study as a school counselor is, again, probably the prompt that you want to have in mind as you're writing something like this. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Cerrito.
No, I was just going to say that all makes, perfect sense. Is, yeah, I definitely want to hear a little bit about, your reason for why a school counselor? What is it about being a school counselor that appeals to you?
A current resume, and then 3 letters of recommendation. Now, I know we normally will hear, well, who should write the letters of rec? What topics should they be covering? What we're really looking for is who can speak to your ability to do graduate level coursework, essentially, or to be able to be a successful school counselor. So typically, a professor from undergraduate or grad school would be relevant. Maybe a colleague at work, if you're in a related profession, an academic advisor, are all common ones that we will see that I think also provide impact. And Dr. Cerrito, is there anything else that you are looking for in a qualified applicant that we may not have listed here on the slide?
I think this pretty much covers it. I think, the biggest piece for me is that statement of goals, and
Mhm.
really looking at the fit and just making sure that it's a good fit, and that, you're motivated in a way, and how school counseling appeals for you. I think that's what I'm most interested in, is that statement of goals, and of course your background, your current resume, just showing, what has kind of led up to this point, because we all have career stories to share. And, oftentimes there are certain things in our lives that are catalysts. And so maybe you can share what your catalyst was for deciding that now was the right time to pursue school counseling.
Absolutely. And I should say we do, and Dr. Cerrito, you do accept applications spring, summer, and fall semesters as well.
We do, yes, we do. And we have application deadlines with those. Those are posted on the website. And then if you've missed that deadline, we do have a wait list that I'm keeping track of, to see if we have, if someone were to accept and decide not to come, we can fill those spots as well. But yeah, you can check out that website, and all those dates are listed there.
And I will say that the program admission is competitive. So typically we will receive far more applications than what there is space in the program. So the application deadlines are important to monitor. It's really important to try to apply sooner rather than later, just because due to the demand.
Right, absolutely. I would agree, Tom, because we don't have, an unlimited number of seats. We can't offer, and tons of different sections. And so we get to the point that, when we fill, we really can't accept any more students beyond that, because we just don't have the number of sections of classes. So my recommendation would be to definitely check out those deadlines, and to, plan ahead of, getting your application in even earlier than the deadline, just to ensure that there's space available.
Absolutely. I think that covers application and admission. And
Yeah.
then, right. And then, so then Dr. Cerrito's contact information, and Chelsea and I are always happy to help. I think collectively, we work for you. We're definitely happy to help in any way. So if there's any questions that we have not answered tonight, or that, that you have some additional questions down the road, please do not hesitate to contact us. Um, I know there are a lot of great questions that are in the Q&A, and
Oh,
then Matt
good.
and Dr.
I
Cerrito, are
love
we ready to
questions.
transition?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good ones here. You could tell a lot of people have done their homework here. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the start here. Let's see here. Can you take a course and do the internship at the same time? And this
Yes.
is who already has a master's in clinical mental health counseling.
Yes. So the internship does not have to be taken without any courses. You
Okay.
can take a course, like, so say you need a course like orientation to professional school counseling. So you can take, that's a course that's a prerequisite, but before you would get to do, internship. But yes, it is possible to take coursework along with. Most students, I would say, don't take a ton of coursework when they get to internship, because internship is such a time intensive experience. So, it's not like they're taking 9 credits and then internship, but, it would be okay to take one class or maybe 2 classes with internship.
Great, thank you. For someone who may be working in the school district right now, are they able to do their internship or practicum in the school that they're working in?
Yes, and so that's a great question. And so as long as the school district would allow and agree to that, we would be okay with that. So I always tell students we're guests within the building. So, you would have to get permission from your school, and there would have to be a school counselor within that building and within that district that is certified as a school counselor and has at least 3 years of school counseling experience, who would be willing to supervise you during the school counseling experience. So I think that would be an important part to ask the school district is, do you have a school counselor that's willing to do it? And will they allow you some time to be able to fulfill those hours? But yes, from our perspective, that would be perfectly okay for you. And a lot of our students do choose to do that.
Okay. For students who are working under an emergency certification, can they complete their 600-hour internship hours while working?
Yes. So for students who are in an emergency certificate situation, remember though that the certificate that you're going for is PK through 12. So
Mhm.
let's say, for example, you're working under an emergency certificate as an elementary school counselor and it's K through 5.
Mhm.
So you can count part of your hours, part of your job hours towards that 600-hour internship, but you would within your district need to get some exposure to middle school and high school in order to meet our certification and the state certification standards. Because even though your job is as an elementary school counselor, your certificate is PK through 12. So you would just want to say, yes, you can count some of your hours in your job, but your district then would need to agree to allow you to get some exposure to those other developmental levels. And we've had this situation before with students, and most school districts are very willing and they have someone who would work with that individual because they're thrilled to have you on board under an emergency certificate. So they, want to help you get what you need.
For students who have graduated from Lock Haven or Bloomsburg or Mansfield, do they need to submit the standard application? So that's actually one I think that either Chelsea or I can answer. So you would still have to apply. However, you would not need to submit your transcripts. There's a location on the application where you can indicate that you are an alum of Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, or Mansfield, and we can pull those transcripts on your behalf. However, you do have to submit the traditional application, but that is a really good question. And this is one that came up a couple times. Do the courses go in any particular order? Like, is it a linear format, or is there some variability or flexibility for how and when they would take them?
There's flexibility in a lot of the courses. So you'll note, if we go back to the curriculum, I can just flip through this here quickly. The far majority of them do not have prerequisites. So, you don't necessarily have to take them in any particular order. A lot of times for new students, we like for them to take the orientation to professional school counseling, mainly because that teaches you all about becoming a school counselor. And if you say in, that first course, oh gosh, this isn't for me, we don't want you to take that too late in the program and then realize that's not for you. It very rarely happens that someone says it's not for them, but we want you to be an informed consumer and have that right off the bat, that exposure to being a school counselor. So that is one that we like students to take. And so in terms of practicum and internship, we ask that students have that orientation class, that they have the counseling, the basic counseling skills and
Mhm.
helping relationships. So there are a few prerequisites to some of the more advanced courses, but by far, I would say the majority of our courses are, and that's why we can allow students to enter, fall, spring,
Mhm.
or summer, is
Right.
because it's not necessarily like you have to do this and this and this and this and this,
Mhm.
because we don't follow a cohort model. And so, we have students who are part-time and full-time, and they come at different points in the semester. So we're pretty flexible with how students take the courses, but there are a couple courses that serve as prerequisites to other courses.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Are students able to transfer credits in?
So students can transfer credits in from an outside university. They can do up to 9, but it has to be comparable courses. So if you look at those courses, we can't take a graduate level course that doesn't match up with one of our required courses, but they can transfer from an outside institution. They can transfer up to 9 credits into our institution. So yes, it is possible to do that. It would again be on a case by case basis, where we'd be looking at what specific courses did you take and how do those courses match up with what we are requiring for the degree and or certification.
Okay. What is the difference between the master's degree and the post grad certificate? Um, is that a separate program?
So it is. So the master's degree leads to a Master of Science degree in school counseling with the school counseling, the PK through 12 elementary and secondary school counseling certification. The postmaster's certificate are for those who already have a master's degree in counseling or a related field and are just seeking school counseling certification. So
Mhm.
they would be looking at oftentimes taking those school counseling specific courses.
Mhm.
Most of the time it's, anywhere between like 12 to 20 credits as opposed to 48 credits. So it's less credits because they've already earned a master's degree in counseling and have already taken, some of those core courses or a lot of those core courses.
Mhm. How are students able to complete a practicum while teaching full time? I guess what does the dynamic look like?
So remember, the practicum is 100 hours. So if we divide that out over 16 weeks, 15 or 16 weeks, if we don't include finals week, we're looking at about 7 hours a week. So oftentimes individuals, if they're teaching full time for the practicum, will go in, an hour early, or maybe they'll use a planning period or a lunch period, and they'll kind of piece those hours together over the week. So that's the practicum experience. The
Okay.
internship, like I mentioned before, is a bigger it's a bigger number of hours. It's 600 hours, but that can be done over 2 semesters. So then they would be dividing that up 300 hours and 300 hours. And again, very similarly, where districts would have to agree to allowing that individual to work with their school counselor, and whether that's sometimes elementary school starts a little later than high school. So if they're a high school teacher, maybe they'll stay a little later at the end of the day and work. So there's things that, again, every district dynamic is a little different in terms of start times and finish times, and using planning periods, or maybe going into the evening. Sometimes high schools will have college application nights, or FAFSA frenzies, or there'll be other opportunities in the evening that you can kind of pull together those hours. And the other important piece that I didn't mention about the hours is the 600 hours is the full number of hours, but we're looking at direct hours, which are different than the 600. So direct hours, we want, somewhere around 40%. So about 240 hours with clients, with students, and usually students get way more than that. But there's professional development that can be included in those 600 hours. So for example, maybe they go to a conference and they get some hours that way. And so there's, some things even that teachers do as part of their academic day that may count. Maybe they do like an in-service day that relates to the topic of something that they'd be doing as a school counselor, and they can be counting that. So again, it's hard to say, like, there's not a kind of one size fits all for that. It's really just having a conversation with your school district and figuring out where are there open opportunities for you to kind of insert yourself in, and will the school district embrace that?
Okay. Are students in the program able to go on and earn an LPC licensure?
Yeah, so we have set up the program. It's 48 credits, LPC, which is licensed professional counselor in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to specify by saying in the state of Pennsylvania, because other states have different requirements for licensure. So in Pennsylvania, 60 credits are required. But the minimum number of hours for the degree has to be 48. So we meet the minimum number of credits of 48. But you can do additional credits. You can do 12 additional credits to get to 60, and that meets the educational requirements. But to become licensed, in addition to having those 60 credits, you still need to pass an exam, and you need to get a minimum of 2 years post-master's experience. So you can't enter and become an LPC immediately. There's some things that you need to do before you get to that point. But the 48 credit program does meet that. You would just need 60 credits. So while you're getting your 2.5 or whatever it is postmasters experience, you could be taking those additional credits. And we are, and Tom, you're aware of this, working on having perhaps another option in the future where students can kind of choose a 48 credit track or a 60 credit track. So that might be something that you might see coming soon. And that's, we're in talks with that right now, just so to be able to provide some more options for students. So keep your eyes and ears open on that one.
When do summer classes begin?
So summer classes begin right after May 30th, which is this year. I was just looking at this the other day, so let me just flip to my calendar here. May 27th, Tuesday, May 27th.
Tuesday, May 20. And when can students start to pick their classes for the summer?
So registration opens on April 2nd
Okay.
at 8 a.m.
Is the orientation course offered in each semester?
No, the orientation course right now is only offered in fall semesters only.
And how long does each class run for?
So our classes are scheduled from 5 to 8, but we are online via Zoom. So I would say that even though they're scheduled that way, there might be some weeks that you're meeting a little less or a little bit more. I would say most classes are about at least an hour and a half, but it really is at the professor's discretion if they want to go a little over. And, depending on the topic and if there's any group work that week, it may go a little over that. We do a lot the 3 hours, and then it's really the instructor's choice to decide how they want to organize that particular class. But all of our classes you'll see posted that are meeting from 5 to 8. But I
Do the
would say the reality is that they're probably not meeting the full 3 hours just because that's a long time to be on Zoom. But again, every professor is a little different in terms of what they like to do.
okay. Do the classes for the postmaster, sir, vary from person to person?
They do, mainly because if you already have a master's degree, it depends on what your master's degree is in. So, and how many of those courses that we require you've already taken. So there is quite a bit of variability in that because, if you're coming from a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, chances are a lot of the courses are, at least those core courses, are going to be very similar. If you're coming from a master's degree in sociology,
Mhm.
maybe not. So that's why it really is on a case by case basis.
Okay. For a student who's starting the program this summer, would they be able to start their practicum in the fall?
No, because a prerequisite to practicum is that orientation to professional school counseling class, and that's not offered until the fall. So they have to complete that course before they can move into practicum. So the earliest, if someone was coming in summer, we don't offer that course. They would have to take that fall semester, and they can start, if they really wanted to start, as early as spring.
Mhm. Okay. If you're working in another state within a public school system, are you not permitted to complete the internship and clinical experience within another state? Does it have to be in Pennsylvania?
That's a great question, and we've looked at this before. And so the answer to that is it has to be completed in Pennsylvania. And because, again, your certificate is a Pennsylvania specific certificate. So if you are, going to be planning to work in Massachusetts, for example, we don't know with 100% accuracy what I don't know. I know what Pennsylvania wants, but I can't guarantee that I know may know some other states, but not all of them. So, your certification is in Pennsylvania as a school counselor, and so it may or may not transfer over to another state. So we really like to err on the side of caution and not have students placed in other states for practicum or internship, because again, those states' requirements are sort of an unknown to us, and we don't want to have students get into positions where, they are taking classes with us but trying to get certified somewhere else, and it doesn't always translate well or carry over. So that's just really out of an abundance of caution, just to make sure that, we are certifying students here in this state. And so it becomes also difficult from a supervisory level to really supervise students who are doing things in other states that might look very different from what a Pennsylvania school counselor does.
Great. Would a student be able to split their practicum hours between elementary and high school and then do their full internship at a middle school? Would that meet the requirements?
Well, I mean, if we add up, practicum is 100 hours and internship is 600 hours. So that's 700 hours. And I like to tell students, we don't have to draw a line down the sand evenly, but we try to get as close as we can. So that's about 233 hours. So if we divide 700 divided by 3, we're looking at about 233 hours in each setting. So if you split a 100-hour practicum across 2 settings, you'd only be doing 50 hours in one and 50 hours in the other, and then you did a full 600 hours in a different setting. Yes, you'd get your 3 settings, but the number of hours would be really skewed. So, again, we really shoot for balance across those 3 settings because we don't know where you're going to end up, right? You may say, I love elementary school, and this happens a lot. And then students get to high school and they're like, oh my gosh, I love high school. I didn't think I would like high school, or I love middle school. And so that balance is really important. And again, not that we have to go even Steven exactly 233, but the goal is to get you as close to being even across those 3 as possible. But having said that, it really depends on each school. So I'll use Hazleton for an example. We place a lot of our students in, or a good number of them in Hazleton, and a lot of their buildings are K-8. So in that K-8 setting, they're getting elementary and middle school. right? Versus somewhere else that might be K through 4, they're only getting elementary. So, I say that because there's a lot of, it's not really a yes or no answer. It really depends on the district. So it would depend upon, your question would really depend on how does that district divide out their different grade levels? Because if it's Hazleton, K through 8, sure, because you're going to have access to elementary and middle school all in one building, and then you'll go and do high school in another building. So, we have those conversations with students.
Great. Um, let's see. Can students preview their classes prior to April 2nd for the summer?
Yes. And so there is a way if you can go on, I think it's My Commonwealth, u.edu. And then if you go down to the bottom, there's like where it says course search. And so if you go to that little, it's like a little yellow icon, and click on course search, it'll take you then to that. And then if you type in COUN, which is the prefix to a lot of our classes, and then type in the semester, which is summer or fall, you can see the courses that are being offered in the summer and the fall. And you can't register for them yet, but you can see them because you can't register until April 2nd.
And I did just put the link in the chat for you.
Perfect. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
I was going to do it up, but I thought I don't want to take time to do that.
How many classes can a person take in the summer, and when does the summer end?
It's a great question. So the summer is the 12 weeks ends, gosh, I want to say August. Chelsea, maybe you can link them out too. Can you find the summer academic calendar? So in the summer, I believe it's 12 credits they can take. And then if they do any more than that, I think they may have to get special permission from our graduate dean. But I would say I haven't really seen anybody do more than 12 in the summer, just because there's not, they could do 12 and they could do it across, different, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. But again, we would want to have conversations because I think, the one thing that I notice with students is, sometimes they can become really, it's the word I'm looking for, excited, and that's a good thing, and they want to jump in, but we want them to be a little bit cautious with that because we want them to be successful. And so jumping in and doing too many credits at first until you kind of get a feel for what graduate coursework is like, I oftentimes caution against that because I want to make sure students are successful. And sometimes that means going a little slower to get started. And then once you get a feel for that, then ramping up as opposed to going in and, feeling overwhelmed and then saying, this school counseling degree isn't for me anyway, right? We want to try to avoid that.
Yeah. Let's see. Does the mentor for the internship and practicum have to be in the same building as you? Again, for someone who is under an emergency cert in the middle school, but they are the only counselor.
Great question, Tom. The answer to that is no. So as long as there is a school counselor who is certified with at least 3 years of school counseling experience within the district, that person can supervise you. So if you are emergency certified in a middle school and you're the only school counselor, well, then who else is going to supervise you, right? Because it's only you. But then you would look to either an elementary or high school counselor to technically serve as your supervisor as long as they're within the district. So they don't have to be within the building. Ideally, they are within the building. Like we encourage that just because it's easier that way. But in that particular instance, when there is nobody else, then yes, we would look across the district.
Okay. So I think that gets us through all of the questions, and the questions were all awesome. I really appreciate everybody, again, making the ask because you're probably not the only people wondering. So again, really do appreciate that. As we, kind of wrap up the rest of the event, Dr. Cerrito, Chelsea, do you have any advice for anyone who may be considering the program? Dr. Cerrito.
I would just say, go on the website, the school counseling website. There's student testimonials on there. A lot of the information I covered tonight will be on there. You'll get to see like an advising sheet and, get to hear from other students. I think there's a panel, I believe it's still on there, Tom, that we did of some former students who came back and kind of talked about their experiences and would love to do that again. Tom, I've had some students who have recently reached out and wanted to come back to my internship class and talk. And I thought, oh, I should be bringing them in for a panel presentation and we should do something like that again. But I would just say, go and look at the website and think about, the way that courses are offered is online for you. Does that make sense for where you are in your life right now? And, just, thinking about this session and what makes us different, and, how do you want the next couple of years to look for you? What do you predict your career to be like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And, um, I think when I was making decisions about, graduate programs and doctoral programs, a lot of it came down to who I was going to be working with. And so I would say use that too as a barometer, like, talk to faculty members in those, in whatever school you decide to go, in whatever program, and, see, is there a connection? Is that some, you're going to spend a lot of time with that person, right? Or that those faculty. And so you want that to be a good relationship, and you want that to feel like it's right. And so I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point, Dr. Surya, where we do have the alumni panel available, the alumni panel discussion available on demand on the website. That's a great thing because those are all recent graduates who are working in the field and can offer you not only their perspective of what it's like to go through the program, but what the transition was like then getting into their careers. There's a lot of, cool things to add in there. And Chelsea, and I should say Chelsea is a former educator who worked in the school district and probably has a unique perspective here. Chelsea, did you have anything else to add?
I would just say don't be afraid to ask questions and go for it. It changes uncomfortable, but you're improving yourself and you're moving forward in your career. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's to myself, to Tom, to Julie, and get the answers to the questions that you need. And then be ready for a fresh start.
Yeah, and we know that, and that's a great point, Chelsea. Like a lot of times students will come to that. I'm typically the one that teaches that orientation class. And so, some students haven't been in school in, 15 or 20 years, and they come with a real heavy sense of like that questioning, can I really do this? Is this, and that self-doubt. And so, that's a piece of it too, just talking through that with them and quelling those fears and saying like, this is a transition in your life, but you'll get through this transition. And, I think that that's important, is ask the questions and know that when you're making a change or you're going through a transition, it can be scary, but we're here to support you through that.
All right. Well, for anyone who is watching the live part, or if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you in the future and hope everybody has a great night. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.